What's up, Sherpa Network? Thank you for tuning in today. My name is Jonathan Tenenbaum, aka JT, aka J On, aka Sherpa Winfrey, and I'm the host and producer of Domains Sherpa, where all roads lead to domains. Today's show is part of our Down the Rabbit Hole series. As we say on Domains Sherpa, all roads lead to domains. In the reverse, our work with domains has us venturing all the time into different areas and topics, some domain related, some that aren't, hence the jump down the rabbit hole. Interesting stuff happening in the space. So let's dig right into it. Over to my right, I got my boy Andrew Rosener, aka Morpheus, aka the Dirk Diggler of digital assets, aka Bob Lee Swagger the Sniper, aka Drew. Drew got what I need, aka every Rosener has its thorn, Graybeard the domain pirate, aka Lobster Claw. What up, dog?
Sup?
Let's go. What's good with you, man? How you feeling?
Oh man, unfortunately, I'm very tired today. I'm just wiped out, but otherwise, I'm great. I'm just watching my mood swing with the price of Bitcoin. That's it.
Dude, what'd you call it on our call earlier today? Quantum entanglement. You know what I'm saying?
That's it. Quantum entanglement. My emotions are quantumly entangled with the price of Bitcoin.
Oh, that's why it's like as you get older, you get like arthritis, right? Like you're like, oh, I can tell it's gonna rain because my joints hurt. In this case, it's like you're like, ooh, I'm feeling a little off. Bitcoin must be down, and then it's like without even looking at the chart. Yeah, man, quantum entanglement, baby, that's what it is. Special guest below us, at least on my screen, we got the one and only Matt Gould, aka Goldfinger, aka Pot of Gold, aka I ain't saying he's a gold digger, but he ain't messing with no broke, aka let's go with the Gould version, aka Roz Al Gould, aka Gould's out for the summer. He is the founder and CEO of Unstoppable Domains, focusing on creating blockchain-based domains to simplify cryptocurrency payments, hosting decentralized websites, and empowering users with digital ownership in the Web3 ecosystem. Yeah, that came right from ChatGPT. These domains enable, I'm going to keep going with what they actually kicked out. These domains enable users to replace complex cryptocurrency addresses with human readable names and offer features like enhanced data privacy and security. Before founding Unstoppable Domains in 2018, Gould worked as director of operations at Talkable, where he joined in 2012 as a data analyst, holds a bachelor degree in finance from the Scheller College of Business at Georgia Tech that he earned in 2006. Under his leadership, Unstoppable Domains has gained prominence in the decentralized web space, advocating for user-owned digital identities that integrate seamlessly with cryptocurrency wallets and other blockchain tools. How'd they do, man? How'd OpenAI do?
I mean, it's super impressive. The AI tools are amazing. And coming here to chat with you guys feels like full circle, right? Because we started out Web3 on-chain domains, started out with Andrew Rosener, and was one of the early people we were talking to, and the whole field was just completely new. And here we are, later, moving over to DNS, doing a lot more stuff in the DNS domain industry. And the AI is literally telling you what I do now. So, man, it's amazing how fast it flies, and this tech is getting crazy.
Yeah, it's getting wild.
Well, and that's why
very accurately describe everyone in the industry, in the like blockchain Web3 domain name industry's kind of growth. Because when it first came out, everyone's like, this is amazing new technology. It's going to change everything. Very, difficult. Then we had the huge 2021 bubble with NFTs, and all of these Web3 domain systems are NFTs. Then you had the bubble 23, and everyone Web3 companies, and Unstoppable led this charge, said, okay, we need to integrate in with ICANN, right? So we went into ICANN and spoke with those folks, got our registrar license. It took a year for Unstoppable Domains to get their registrar license. I think the typical timeline is 4 months. And I believe that 8 months of that was because ICANN had to wrap their head around what a Web3 domain was. Going forth with them, making sure that there wasn't user confusion, trying to understand how these things would work together. I think also in Web3, people realized that having a name for your wallet address was neat, but not a requirement. Whereas having a name for your business, like .com name for your business, you have to have that. And so if you're trying to sell something, you want to have a product that people have to have. And I think it may just be a time period thing. So maybe 20 years from now, you have to have some on-chain name for sending and receiving payments as the market grows. Mm-hmm. But today, that's not the case. And we're integrating in traditional DNS, into Unstoppable Domains, where I think we're now supporting 50 plus traditional ICANN TLDs. We'll be over a couple hundred soon. We're just a full-fledged ICANN registrar, and the biggest difference is by default everything on our registrar is on-chain, right? So if you transfer domain names into Unstoppable Domain, we handle all the tech on the back end, so you don't even need to know that blockchain and Web3 is happening. And every time we talk to customers, especially domainers, they don't want to know anything about blockchain and Web3, and honestly, they don't need to, but they do want to have faster transfers, lower fees, lower commissions. And so we're focusing on those value benefits. And crypto in 2021, you had to be there to understand how crazy it was. People were just saying decentralized super DAO with a token and then pushing prices to 50 billion. And it was just a mania. And now people are saying value prop is XYZ, come check us out. And how can we kind of, push things forward? So I'm feeling very positive about bringing domain names on chain. And as we are learning, and there's a steep learning curve coming into ICANN and learning all the intricacies of all the different TLDs and all the country codes and how all this works. I mean, there's some things that happen when you're a domainer. It's like you transfer a domain name from one place to one registrar to another, and it takes weeks. And you're like, why is this happening? You have domains up for sale, maybe on certain websites. You find out, oh wait, it wasn't really for sale, or the buyer backs out, or the seller backs out. All sorts of things like this, that if we can put them on chain and put some guarantees into the software code so that it's more programmatic, more automated, and it's on chain, but you don't even need to care about that, so that you can just get paid faster, list quicker, get your transfers in better. I think that's where we're going to see the advantages here.
So what does that look like? What were the?
Yeah. I gotta give credit to some of the people on my team and also at ICANN, because I'm kind of like you. When I run into a regulation that doesn't make sense, I immediately go, "This is stupid. I want to smash it with a hammer." Right?
Yeah.
Like that's my gut reaction. And I want to give a shout out to specifically Bill on my team, who and Brad as well.
Bill the Hammer? Can we call it Bill the Hammer?
No. Bill's actually really nice. I'm the hammer, but he was the one who's like, you don't hammer here. You just need to talk to people, right? And really, it was showing up. So we showed up to a bunch of things. We now have people on our team who are part of some of the ICANN, voting
groups.
Yeah, the working group, sure. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So it was showing up. It was explaining ourselves. Brad showed up at one of the meetings, explaining what we wanted to do. Meeting with their technical team. I met with their CTO a couple times. Brad has a few times. A great guy, and their team over there, and just saying, hey, here's how we're trying to build the technology itself. Had to get sign off from the tech side of, well, not sign off, but just had to get it reviewed on the tech side that's saying this is not going to cause problems in the DNS system. So just on a technical front, it's like, will this cause DNS problems?
Yeah.
You had to get through those hoops. It took about 6-7 months in our application process to get to that point. And then it was just political. And I actually give them credit because they decided first half of this year to turn the page, right? And ICANN said, okay, we're just going to say, you know what? Consumers are smart. They're going to be able to know the difference between a crypto domain and an ICANN domain as long as they're educated about it. And they want to spend their money on crypto domains. That's totally up to them as long as it's clear. And that was the majority of their concerns. And now we're rolling. And Unstoppable Domains is, there's a couple other companies who've also gone through and gotten their registrar license, but I think we're the ones who are most actively progressing on this. And then we're also applying for even more ICANN licensure. So we're getting our registry service provider license like that's due in May of this year. So that we'll be able to run full stack ICANN. Like we'll be able to run the back end and the front end. I feel like Apple does. You want to own the full stack or else you don't know what's going on. And that's the approach that we're taking. So we're trying to learn. And then, the other people in the Web3 domain space, they ask us, hey, how are you handling this? And we're trying to educate them on what we think is going to work. So there's still a lot of questions about what's going to happen for the next ICANN auction that's coming up in 2027. And, I think that's going to be good for the industry because post that auction, all of a sudden you're going to have clarity, right? Everyone's going to know, like these TLDs converted, these TLDs did not. Here's how these things are going to be connected. You'll probably see some movement here for some people in Web3 domain names who are going to try to position themselves differently after that. And I think that, so when I'm talking internally, my team's like, when do you think we'll see, a lot of growth? I think that auction's a big one. obviously the crypto market going up right now is good for us. And it's regulatory clarity on just the namespace in general. And I think we'll get that post auction, because once you have the next ICANN auction, Andrew, that the next one after that's going to be 20 years, right? So when the next ICANN auction is 20 years away, then you can have an ecosystem of Web3 domains.
No, I maybe not.
Doesn't count the ones that are contested, right? I mean, it's going to be 250 if you're the only applicant.
Yeah, that's table
for a
stakes.
particular
Yeah, it's
string,
table
right?
stakes.
Right.
Yeah.
And-
So, but what
and-
we're looking
and-
at, the ones that are contested, those are going to be there, right? We could probably rattle off, 100 that'll be contested, right? But there's a long tail of ones that will not be contested or will be lightly contested. That I do think that there will be.
Well, and what about the fact that we're not going to
some
have
well-heeled investors that want to, have a piece.
Right, but we're not going to have private auctions, right? So you won't have the ability for somebody like Donuts last time. I almost said last year, but last time.
But does that drive that? All that does is drive higher prices per string. It doesn't drive more strings being
right. But what it did, for example, like Donuts really understood the game, right? They probably better than anybody. So their plan last time was to use some of the private auctions to effectively fund the other ones, right? So they said, hey, we're going to apply for
but to fund other contested auctions.
Yeah. Well, and just in general, even some of the uncontested ones, right? So they were able to effectively,
I mean those, but that money was they already had that money to begin with. They had to put that fee up front before any contesting could happen.
Yeah, but some of that, if it's financed,
so my point is simply that doesn't adjust the number of applications. Now the price, the table stakes is higher this time. If it's 250, I think it was 175 or 180 last time.
185.
So it's not cheap, but I do think so I've got 122 new gTLD ideas in my folder.
So that means you only need to have like 25 million to bid.
Yeah. So it's small.
Well, and I do think that what we saw, right?
Yeah.
What we did see was that, and this is to Andrew's point, the generic extensions had a lot of, sort of, I don't want to say surprise success, but you realize that, wow, if you have a generic string that can pick up, and especially in this crypto environment, right, that can gain traction and popularity and adoption. Well, now, I mean, you look at what XYZ has done. XYZ hasn't relied solely on crypto, but the fact that it's generic in nature has been helpful. Whereas, dot consulting and dot whatever, and, even the dot attorneys, there's 4 or 5 different versions of attorney or lawyers, attorneys, that are all sort of competing with each other, and none of them have seemed to, taken over, right? So, but you can get generic strings with, 3 characters, right? And, so just meaning, and in fact, some of the stuff that would have been something like, what's Page's clothing design, and what is it? It's like CD. What's his string?
I don't know.
But my point is they turn like 3 characters into clothing, art, and design, or whatever it was, and then that's become their string, trying to push it into a particular industry. And I'm sorry, Paige, I'll correct it in the show notes. But but I think that's an interesting angle, and I think that does create a thing where it's like, oh wait, are all 3 how many combinations of just 3 random characters are going to be applied for as a string here, potentially?
Not that many.
But Matt, what do you think about all that? I mean, as somebody who's very interested in this.
Yeah, I mean, I have my spreadsheet like Andrew, right? And I have that thing on lock, right? And we're looking all the time at where we think the ROI is going to be in the next round. But in particular for Web3, there's going to be a lot of competitive things. You have to be ready for that. But I also will reiterate that I think after the auction is through, that will also help Web3, because there'll be a little bit more clarity around the one route ICANN. So I think that it has a different kind of impact on web domains than it does on the traditional deals. I think it's going to be a lot of investment, which is also really good. You're going to see, $1 billion+ come into the domain space for this investment period. And then I also think you'll see a lot of disappointed investors.
Totally. as always.
We
What?
yeah, we
So
learned
here-
that last
here's the
round.
hot shit. Which string do you think will be the single most contested?
It's going to be something in AI or crypto, depending on what market is doing what. What do you think is going to be the most contested string?
I think it'll be .Bitcoin or .BTC. I think that's going to be the most. I think that'll be the most contested.
Interesting.
Even more so than like an AI flavored one, because AI.ai.
Yeah, but what do you do with AI? What do you do with AI? I mean, you already have .ai. What are you gonna, say? GAI, general AI, or LLM, .LL. Like I don't know. I don't see the opportunity there just because .ai is already strong. As much as I see, I can see a .human or a . Well, Amazon's got .bot already. Yeah, I think .Bitcoin or .BTC is going to be extremely contested.
If we get into 2027 and Bitcoin's at $1 million, then I was going to say I agree with Andrew that .BTC and .Bitcoin are going to be hot properties, just because you're going to have all these Bitcoin people with 100 Bitcoin they bought for a sandwich back in 2011, right? And they're going to be able to come to auction and pay whatever. But so I think the crypto market has the most remaining, because anything associated with DeFi services, even not on the new TLDs, but just generally across the board. And you're seeing. So here's a couple of interesting things. We're seeing a lot of crypto companies registered .fun out of Radix, right? So we're seeing that, pump.fun. I don't know, Andrew, if you're familiar with that. It's
unfortunately I am.
It's a way to create. Yeah. So .fun is emerging as an interesting consumer play, but crypto specific, just like XYZ. A lot of it. So I will say that I think crypto is going to be a tailwind, especially with Trump in office, for the next 3 years for domaining. And I think this cycle is different than 2021 because it's less bubble. Like the money coming in now is.
He said it's different. It's different this time.
No, never say it.
It's different this
time.
Don't
ever say it. It'll never be different. It's never different
this time. No. Well. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right?
And the dollar amount's going to be, that's 3 trillion additional market cap. You know what I mean? When Bitcoin 2x back in 2017, you're adding like
it
500
only took like 200.
If we 2x now,
million. Yeah.
So if you just think about that, that's a lot more just raw dollars. Even if this time, if it goes up 50% from here, that's still more dollars, right? Than when it went up 50% back in 2016. So I think a tremendous amount of impact. So that's where I think the crypto market hits things. And it's mostly on the money side. And then the other thing that I think is long-term, people ask, like, what's the long-term vision for domainings and crypto at Unstoppable Domains? I think it's DeFi and domains, and you'll see people talking about that, calling it DomainFi, right, or something like this. But the domain market has less liquidity, less lending than a lot of other traditional asset markets, right? If I want to go get a loan on my house,
virtually zero.
If I want to get a loan on my domain, a loan on my domain is much more difficult. I think that's the long term. When I'm talking to my team 5+ years, if we get ICANN domains on chain, we're going to build a really fundamentally sound lending market for domain names, which will increase liquidity in the space. It should help prices, support prices. But I think importantly, and Andrew probably
it also allows the
on this,
introduction of insurance, which is super critical to the future development of the asset class, in my opinion.
Why do you think that? I actually think it's going to do something a little bit different, but why insurance in particular?
So, because it's very difficult for standard financial institutions to take custody, which is what is required ultimately if they're going to treat something as collateral. And in order to turn domain names into collateral, actual, pristine collateral, you need some kind of insurance product.
Next 3 years for domaining. And I think this cycle is different than 2021 because it's less bubble. Like the money coming in now is.
He said it's different. It's different this time.
No, never say
it's different
Just
this time.
Don't ever say it. It'll never be different. It's never
different this time.
It's
No.
more,
Well.
it's more,
History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right? And I think that's kind of the thing. Is like, what? They're also never exactly the same. And I think it's some of the, and then, so go ahead, Matt. Continue with what you were saying as far as,
we're going to have a bubble, right? People are going to get overexcited. It is going to pop. I just think people are underestimating the amount of scheduled flows, like pensions, ETF, like these people. I think this, what I'm trying to say is, I think it could be bigger, right? And the dollar amount's going to be, that's 3 trillion additional market cap. You know what I mean? When Bitcoin 2x back in 2017, you're adding like
it
500
only took
million.
like 250.
If we
it took like
2x now,
250 million. Yeah.
So if you just think about that, that's a lot more just raw dollars. Even if this time, if it goes up 50% from here, that's still more dollars, right? Than when it went up 50% back in 2016. So I think a tremendous amount of impact. So that's where I think the crypto market hits things. And it's mostly on the money side. And then the other thing that I think is long-term, people ask, like, what's the long-term vision for domainings and crypto at Unstoppable Domains? I think it's DeFi and domains, and you'll see people talking about that, calling it DomainFi, right, or something like this. But the domain market has less liquidity, less lending than a lot of other traditional asset markets, right? If I want to go get a loan on my house,
virtually zero.
If I want to get a loan on my domain, a loan on my domain is much more difficult. I think that's the long term. When I'm talking to my team 5+ years, if we get ICANN domains on chain, we're going to build a really fundamentally sound lending market for domain names, which will increase liquidity in the space. It should help prices, support prices. But I think importantly, and Andrew probably
it also allows for
the
introduction of insurance, which is super critical to the future development of the asset class, in my opinion.
Why do you think that? I actually think it's going to do something a little bit different, but why insurance in particular?
So, because it's very difficult for standard financial institutions to take custody, which is what is required ultimately if they're going to treat something as collateral. And in order to turn domain names into collateral, actual, pristine collateral, you need some kind of insurance product. And so, particularly if it's a domain name that's in use by a business that wants to use its domain name as collateral, there needs to be
automated repo.
Yeah.
I agree that putting things on chain is going to make enforcing that type of repossession like a lot easier for lending. I think the unseen thing that I think is going to happen, and this is very speculative, so I agree with you on insurance. That's definitely going to happen. I think that's just right. That's definitely going to happen. The one that maybe people aren't thinking about is if there's more availability to finance domains, I think we'll see more development further out the risk curve, right? So right now, no, appreciate it. Yeah, we got to get a little grounded here. We're going a little bit too far into space. You don't mind? Let me just jump on. I'll show you guys what we got. Let me see if I pull it up. Yeah, so this is our registrar today. You can go on here. We're supporting 50+ TLDs, and we're going to have a couple hundred next year. You can see Andrew's mug on the front page if you want to. And we're trying to we're focusing strongly on DNS domains. We're pointing out we've got our ICANN registrar license now. The differences in trading functionality. Most of the improvements are, like lower commissions. You can do self brokerage much more easily in some cases. Depends on your situation. We've
Explain
got,
what that means.
So you have a sale right now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
A sale
got a
you've
buyer.
negotiated with somebody separately by email. You have you've agreed on a transaction and you need to settle it.
Yeah, exactly. And the issue is, you don't want to just transfer them your domain until they've transferred the money, and they may not want to transfer you the money until you've transferred them a domain. But we have everything on chain. Like if your domain name is on a system, it's on chain by default, and we have software, smart contracts, right? And you can put your domain name into that smart contract, and then they make their payment with credit card or PayPal or crypto or whatever, and that goes into the smart contract. And when both those things are in the smart contract, it executes, and the domain name goes to that guy, and you get the money, right? And that smart contract is a lot cheaper than escrow services or brokerage service, and so that's self brokerage, right? And then and so that's just small little differentiation. The transfers are also as soon as the blockchain transaction goes through, so a couple minutes. Actually, it's like 20 seconds if everything's going fine on the blockchain. If you do have commissions, we have really low commission fees because it's all software for us. So it's 3% commissions if it just sell. We have landers just like everybody else. That one will load eventually. And we also have, we're trying to build all the traditional DNS functionality, bulk manage, make offer landers, adding in, we got CEDO, I don't know the correct domain or way to pronounce that. We're adding it, working on afternic next. And those are the small pieces of the puzzle. That's like table stakes. And, your domains will show up in our search results, and we're going to be continuing to improve this market. That's the state of that's the state of the art today. And I think the big thing is, if your domain's on Unstoppable Domains, it's on chain. And we're going to continue to add more functionality to that. For instance, lease to own on chain is very interesting because the person misses a payment, you just get it back, right? And that's built in, so you don't have to do a bunch of arguing about back and forth. We can also create lease to own leases where the person can't raise the rent on you, right? So you could have a rent with an option to buy, and it can enforce that the rent stays the same, which is good for buyers because they know that the landlord's not going to raise the rent on them, right? There's all sorts of things that we can enforce on chain that are basically smart contracts that just make the cost of doing business lower. And right now, when you trade a domain name, you're paying in some cases 15 or 25%. And we think that the cost for doing trades on chain is going to be closer to 3%, which is where we're at right now with the marketplace. Even a fully functional thing with all these different services. So if we can bring the cost of doing transactions down, then hope there's more money in the market for trading domains, and hopefully, again, bringing more liquidity to our long-term vision of having people be able to finance, like get financing into domain names, get DeFi into domain names. So that's where we're at, and we're making progress.
Domains, as we say, in some ways, the original NFTs, and why they've always, been what we come back to is because of just the value of a premium domain name. And you guys, again, being able to sort of bridge the gap between the traditional Web 2, the Web 3, and come up with ways to improve the existing system and do those things better is just pretty awesome. But I don't want to make this like I'm just sitting here and being a big old cheerleader. I think more importantly, looking at what you guys have been able to accomplish, and also watching how the, sort of your plans have evolved, and you guys have, again, kind of figured out the best way to, or at least at this point, what's the best way to try to bridge some of that gap. So talk to me, if I've got a name at Unstoppable at your registrar, and you keep saying how the name is on chain, what does that mean as far as like, what if I want to transfer to another registrar? Like, how does some of that I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but, again, you've said it a couple of times, and I think just to clarify what that actually means. So if it's a non-Web3 domain, simple.com, it's at your registrar, what aspects of that are on chain?
Well, so the functionality that you get, you just transfer domain in, and then we put it on chain for you. It allows you to add crypto records to your domain name. So you can add, records for sending and receiving cryptocurrency. You can add records around
records being a wallet address.
Yeah, exactly. A wallet address, sorry, for receiving Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever. And so that's just making your domain more useful for those pieces. The other thing that's nice is when the domain is on chain, everyone in Web3 can see it. So it shows up on the OpenSea marketplaces. It shows up on Rarible marketplaces. So if you're trying to sell a domain name, especially if you want to sell a domain name to a crypto audience, well, you want it to show up in Web3. And so like when they're shopping there for their Bored Ape, maybe they pop over and shop for some domains on chain, right? And that's Web3 is great because once it's on chain, anyone can read it and see it and produce that. And so that increases the visibility for the domain name that you're trying to get out there. For transfers, the system is built to be inter-registrar. So what does that mean? You can move between registrars. We are talking to some other registrars in the space. They are very interested in working with us as soon as we're ready, right? And we're testing the technology on ourselves first. Unstoppable Domains is dog fooding the product, right? And we're talking to others in the industry. I won't name names, but we're talking to some places that have, you know, 1 million plus domains under management. And they're saying, how can we use your system to put domains on chain? Because then transfers will be a lot faster. And like I was saying, transfers should be 20 seconds, not just between people on unstoppable domain names, but transfer should also be 20 seconds between different registrars. And because it's on chain, we'll have an audit log of everywhere it's been. So if there's any kind of problem off chain, it's like, oh, then this person messed up and blah, 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 blah. You can actually see the different places that it went. So you're like, oh, actually, you know, it messed up here. That registrar made a mistake. Here's who we can hold accountable. Some of the biggest mess you have right now is like who's what. And there's no kind of information around all these kind of transfers and where the process may have made some mistakes. And those are the types of things that we were talking about earlier, where
not just transfers, but approvals also. Like, so we are in the middle of closing a deal right now on a big oneword.com domain name. We're going to take equity in the company. And these are serious players backed by, I mean, basically some of the biggest private equity group in the world. And these guys are just straight A players. And they've proposed what they think will be the first single member $1 billion company. And they're going to try and build it on one of our domains. And, you know, in walking through the thesis with them, the reason it resonated with me immediately is that this is sort of, you know, since ChatGPT launched, I've had it in the back of my head. I had, again, like I talked about at the, you know, top of the show, this panic moment of like, you know, ENS launching and thinking, wow, this is disruptive to domains. And with ChatGPT, I thought the same thing. Like, okay, so I mean, already I barely use Google anymore. I pretty much use ChatGPT or Perplexity for all of my search, all of my, let's say, question answer type of stuff. And so I thought, wow, what does that mean for domain names? And is that going to is that going to contract the number of websites? Is that going to change the way that humans actually are interacting with the web? And I saw a lot of threat on the horizon. And so it gave me some anxiety and made me go deep down the rabbit hole, thinking through what does this mean long-term for domain names? And the conclusion that I've arrived at is that this is probably the most bullish thing to ever happen to domain names. Because I think basically the value of everything else basically goes to zero. And the only way to create a moat, maybe that's not today, but 2-3 years from now, the only way to create a moat around whatever it is you want to build, for the most part, there will be exceptions, of course, will be your domain name. And so anybody, not anybody, but, you know, proverbial anybody with a brain and the right resources will be able to go and launch a significant business in virtually any field and compete with companies that may be established players today that have 100 employees or 500 employees or 5,000 employees. And they'll be able to do it with probably 1 to 10% of the manpower and the resources. And you're going to be able to very quickly deploy a website. You're going to very quickly be able to deploy, you know, open source software, payments, agents communicating with each other, making payments between each other, creating subscriptions and transactional fees, and et cetera. All of this will be able to be done in an automated fashion, whereas today it requires like literally whole departments and multiple people and employees, huge cost structures. the capex of launching a $1 billion company is going to go from, let's say it would take $50 to $100 million today to build a 5 to 10 year $1 billion company. And your risk rate on that would be enormous. It's probably a 90% failure rate. You're going to flip that on its head, and it's going to take $1 to $5 million to launch a $100 million to $1 billion company, and you're going to be able to do it with 1 to 5 employees, and or let's say less than 10, and you're going to be able to deploy very quickly. So you're going to have a lot of iteration, a lot of rapid iteration, a lot of, you're going to have this explosion, explosion of new businesses. And the way that each of them will be able to differentiate is with their domain name. And so when I had this conversation, when we were doing this deal, these are really smart people that think through this stuff. They're very technical from an engineering and a finance perspective. And I became very convinced that the thesis is right, and that's where we're heading. And I think that AI is going to blow up the domain name space, especially the premium domain space.